Good Monday morning to you. If you notice the thumbnail, it is a picture of an airplane window. It says, if you can't change your circumstance, change your perspective. I saw this scrolling around some social media, whether it was Facebook or Instagram, and it kind of caught me. If you're like me, you're kind of missing traveling. You're missing flying about all over the world. And I know some of you do that really well, especially being retired. It's those moments where I think retirement's going to be awesome. But the window, the reason I posted that is because it got me thinking about how we understand faith and perspective to our life. I want to share this morning with you the story of the women at the well. It shows up in the Gospel of John in the 4th chapter. And there's a couple details that sometimes maybe we don't sit with long enough to realize the significance of this story. So in the Gospel of John in the 4th chapter, beginning in verse 7, it talks about a Samaritan woman coming to draw water. Now Jesus and his disciples have been traveling around the countryside. They've been preaching. Jesus has been healing. And they're on their way to another location, so they go through Samaria. And in the preceding verses before verse 7, it says that it was about noon. It's the hottest time of the day. And Jesus waits by the well as his disciples go into town to buy some lunch. Now, Jesus is sitting by the well, and a Samaritan woman comes at the hottest time of the day to draw water. And then we have this interaction that many of us know quite well. Jesus talks to her, which is unique. Single men never talk to women. It was inappropriate in so many ways. And then Jesus engages with her. She talks about her life, and he talks about her life. And at the end of the story, this Samaritan woman leaves her jars there, and she goes into town to proclaim Jesus as a prophet, as a Messiah. But I want to stick with the moment they meet, because it's high noon. Typically, in Jewish tradition in ancient times, the women would all go to the well early in the morning. They would go at sunbreak because it was the coolest part of the day. It made sense, right? They were carrying these large jugs of water, and so they would go the coolest part of the day. Often, too, these wells were very dangerous. They were a sloping hole into the ground. It's not what we imagine, the fairy tale bucket being lowered up and then coming up with this beautiful little wall around it to provide its safety. Actually, these wells were often big caverns that had naturally formed into the soil. And so women would travel together to make sure that they were safe, so that none would slip into the cavern, so none would be swallowed. And then, of course, she had to worry about who was lurking around the well. Much like today, women have to be careful of the violence that is around them. They have to be aware of their circumstances, because there are some areas where it's dangerous. And there are women that often find themselves in a situation of violence that they did not expect. And so the reason women went together to grab the water is for safety, for protection, but also for community. Every time you're in a car full of women, you know there's going to be some great stories. I imagine the same is true for men. But the women would gather in community as they went to draw water. Now this woman, the Samaritan woman, she goes at noon. She goes at the hottest part of the day. She goes where there's no one else going with her. She's completely alone. She's putting herself at so many different risks. Why? Why would she do that? Why would she open herself up to all sorts of danger? Well, the exchange with Jesus answers the question. Jesus says in verse 16, "Go and call your husband and come back." The woman answered, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You are right in saying, 'I have no husband,' for you have 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband." Jesus isn't talking to a woman who has married and divorced over and over again. He's talking to a woman who has been married, and then her husband wouldn't give her a certificate of divorce, so he disgraced her. And then the next man that came afterwards disgraced her even more by marrying her without a lawful certificate of divorce. This is a woman that's likely barren. She likely has no value in the formation of society as they knew it at that time. There were circumstances about her life that she couldn't change. There were circumstances about her life that were beyond her control. And so she had a certain perspective about herself, one of such low value that she came at one of the most dangerous times to get water that was necessary for life. The reason I want to focus on this text this morning is back to that window. If you can't change your circumstances, change your perspective. When Jesus meets her, he engages in conversation to change her perspective. As they talk, the woman said, "I see that you're a prophet." And then she expresses her faith. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you say the place you must worship is in Jerusalem. She's talking to him as a Jew. The Jews believed that they had to go to Jerusalem to worship, that they had to go to the temple, where the Samaritans, who were also Jews, just not good enough Jews, they worshipped on the mountain near them. Jesus said, "Believe that the hour is coming when you will worship the Father neither on the mountain in Jerusalem nor here." The hour is coming. In verse 25, the woman said to him, "I know the Messiah is coming, the one who is Christ." And Jesus, in beautiful fashion, in verse 26 says, "Ego eimi, I am he. I am the I am." He speaks into her faith. He declares his name among all the names. And then when the disciples come and they interrupt it, she can't release herself from that profession because she has faith. Despite what her life looks like from the outside, despite the circumstances, despite how everyone else was judging her, deep down, when he says, "Ego eimi," she knows what that means. Interestingly enough, she leaves everything and she goes back to the community that had rejected her. She goes back to the place that had nothing good to say about her. She goes to the place where they didn't even want to fetch water with her. And she proclaims the Messiah. So today is Monday. It's the beginning of the week. I don't know what's holding you back. I don't know what the circumstances are in your life. Maybe they're grand and maybe they're subtle. But whatever it is, change your perspective. Hear that Jesus came to this woman at this well. And if he did that for her, he does that for each of us. Hear that this Jesus engaged her in conversation outside of the social norms, the expectation, even the construct of what worship looked like. And if he does so for this woman, he does so for us. Hear that this woman, who had virtually no self-worth, who saw herself as nothing, was so empowered by Jesus' declaration, by her faith understanding what he was saying, that she broke down every barrier. She released herself of every shame, and she went and proclaimed who God was for her and for the rest of the community. I don't know about you, but I think that's a great way to start the week. Be bold. Go and profess. If you can't change your circumstances, change your perspective and see God at the center of that perspective. Have a great Monday.